2 days after a military coup, the leader of Sudan's interim military council has vowed to, quote, uproot the regime. The military forced President Omar al-Bashir from power Thursday, calling for an end to his 30-year rule. It's uncertain whether the move will be enough to end the huge protests by people on the streets who are demanding a civilian government. Andy Moore from our media partners at the BBC has the story.
A new day in Khartoum and a new leader, but the protesters are still on the streets. The new man has already accepted an important resignation, Salah Ghosh, the head of the powerful National Intelligence and Security Service. The crowds are waiting to see what to make of the man now in charge of their country.
Abdel Fattah el-Burhan is the new guy, but who is he? And what will he say and do differently? Will he chant to our slogans or not? We won't deal with him emotionally. We're waiting to hear his first address, and then we'll decide how to deal with him.
It's a great thing for Sudan, and inshallah our hopes will be realised. We're not leaving the streets until everything goes to our advantage.
Hello family, this is African Esquire and I'm here with a new video. So some things have been going on over in Sudan, and I didn't want to report on it too quickly because I wanted to see how things were kind of turning out. And after it's been almost a week now, and I think there's definitely some positive things happening that I want to talk about. We talk a lot about a lot of the negative things that are happening over on the continent, a lot of the things that are happening behind the scenes. So for example, there's a lot of regime changes. And in the case of something like a Gaddafi, those regime changes might not be something good. But in this instance, it looks like this is actually a positive thing, a positive move. And I wanted to talk about it because I think it's actually something that shows that the African consciousness surrounding power and surrounding self-governance is actually changing. And we don't see the same people who just want to get rid of a president just for the sake of getting rid of the president, but people who actually want to have control over their own politics. So if you haven't heard, the president of Sudan, Omar al-Bashir, has been ousted from the country. And if you don't know about him, this is someone who has a very horrible history of things that has happened. Obviously under him, the genocide in Darfur occurred, and that killed hundreds of thousands of African people. So this is not someone that we wanted to stay in power. This is not a Gaddafi, it's not a Mugabe. This is someone who actually did horrible things to their population. So aside from that, not only was he ousted, but we have what seems like some forward thinkers that are actually in the forefront of his ousting. So I'm going to read some articles, two articles. The first one I'm going to read is called, it's from BBC News. Sudan coup says the military leader vows to uproot the regime. So the leader of Sudan's interim military council has vowed to uproot the regime 2 days after a military coup. Protests continue despite the ousting of longtime leader Omar al-Bashir. Demonstrators have demanded an immediate move to civilian rule and vowed to stay in the streets. Now, here's what I want to point out particularly about this. Similar to the situations that have happened in the past, such as in Egypt, such as in Libya, and a lot of other countries, currently the ousting of the president was followed by the takeover of the military. And that's not always a good thing, as we've seen inside of other countries where the military took over, and it basically led to total destabilization of the country. However, the people here, they're not just satisfied seeing the president gone. And this is what I always talk about on this channel. We can't just think about the symbolism, think about, oh, we need this person out of power, oh, we need Donald Trump out of power, oh, we need Paul Biya out of power. We can't, think about these things like that. Instead, we have to think about them in a bigger picture. And what I love about this is that this is actually being led by an organization of people who are forward thinkers, who are not just looking to see that the president is not there, but are actually looking beyond that. And what they're asking for, unlike other people, they're not just asking for a new leader, but they're actually asking for civilian rule. So currently, as I stated, the military does have power, but these people are not satisfied. They're not happy with just the military having power. They're saying, we don't want this happening again. We do not want another president who's going to take this role and going to do whatever he wants with his power as president. What we want is civilian rule. So to go on reading, the army would maintain peace, order, and security across Sudan during an already announced transition period that would be no more than 2 years until elections could be and civilian rule introduced. So there's the plan, basically. The army is kind of trying to negotiate with the civilians, and what they're saying is that, okay, well, we're going to hold power for 2 years, and then we'll transition to civilian rule. Using a more conciliatory tone, General Burhan also called on the opposition to help us restore normal life and promised to try those who were killed and demonstrators who were killed, because there were some demonstrators that were killed, and vowed a war on corruption. Now, this speech was actually followed by the resignation of FAL Security Chief General Salah Ghosh. Hours after the coup himself, Defense Minister Awad Ibn Auf stepped aside. No reason has been given for either departure. So this is what happens when we have organization, because the civilian group who is taking power and who is trying to ensure that not only do they not have the president in power, but they actually have self-rule. They had a plan, because, you know, there was other leaders who tried to basically come right in after the president and say, oh, I'm going to rule and I'm going to rule. But as I just read, person after person has had to step down because the organization was so powerful. And this is what we're talking about. We need strong organization with our people. If we don't have strong organization, then we can have these momentary movements where it's just based on our emotions. But momentary movements based on emotion, those are only reactionary things. Those are not revolutionary things. This is revolutionary, because when you read more about this group who has been organizing the people, and I want to look for their name, but this group has been organizing the people for quite some time. And because they've been organizing, they've been able to gain enough traction and actually have a plan. And this is what we need. We need not people who just come out and just protest just to protest. We need people who are organizing, people who are in the streets, and people who are having a plan as far as how we're going to actually reach liberation. So this is another article. This one is actually by The Guardian. And the title is Sudan protesters call for a civilian rule in talks with military leaders. And as I stated, the military, they're basically what they're saying is that, you know, we want to hold power for 2 years, and we want to transition eventually into having the civilian rule that you want. But these people are very wise in that they're not satisfied with that. So this is a quote from the article. The Sudan's main protest group, which is called the Sudanese Professionals, reiterated its call for the immediate handover of power to a civilian transitional government and said it would maintain street demonstrations to push for its aims. So let's learn from what they're saying. They're saying that we're not letting up. There's been so many demonstrations just to get the president out of power, and now that the military has seized power, to think that we're going to let up because you have power and you promise us that you're going to give us civilian rule, we're not falling for that. We want the immediate handover of power. And I honestly don't know why the military felt like they needed 2 years, a 2-year time to do this. I mean, it would be different if they were saying, I wouldn't question their motivation so much if what they were saying is, okay, bring us the plan and we're going to implement it. Not we're going to hold power for 2 years and then we'll implement whatever your plan is. No, if they were sincere to me, I would think that they would be more so saying, okay, let's see what y'all have. Let's see what this civilian rule, what y'all want it to look like. Give us the plan, give us the blueprint of what you're trying to do. And then after we have, you know, the whole country has voted on this and everyone feels like this is the right way to go, then we'll hand over power. So I think they're very right to not let up on these military groups. And as I stated in the past, you know, the military taking power does not always mean a good thing. You have to understand a lot of these military officers are the same military officers that were working for the president. They're all of them, but they were working for the president when the president was in power. And a lot of them were doing the same abuses that have been done by the government when the president was in power. So when you look at the different people who might do things that are unethical, who might do things like commit genocide or whatnot, these are the same military officers. So to think that because they're the military, they automatically have their heart for the people, just like any other office or officer, these people are motivated by self. self-interest. So it's very good, I think, that they are basically keeping an eye on the military situation. So I want to read just one more article, and this is actually from The Atlantic. It's called Protesters in Sudan and Nigeria Have Learned from the Arab Spring. Because the thing that I like that they point out is how the protesters this time around have learned from the past, which is something that I always say we have to learn from the past. We have to study the past. We have to study what did work. And based on what did not work and did work, we have to come up with a plan that's actually going to be meaningful. So this is actually a good breakdown of how people have learned from the past and how they're actually going to go forward with any type of revolutions. So it says, back in 2011, anything seemed possible. Tunisia's strongman fell and Egypt soon followed. Protests erupted in Bahrain as well as Libya, Syria, and Yemen. 4 countries saw new governments, but in the end, meaningful change survived in Tunisia alone. And I'll just give a little caveat. I think a lot of these countries did change a lot. In particular, Libya really changed a lot, but it actually changed for the worse. So it's not that things didn't change. It's that, unfortunately, because people were so quick to rush to judgment onto what would be better for their country, they didn't really think about what they were asking for. So, but going back to the article, in Sudan and Nigeria in 2011, some took to the streets to demand change. But in both cases, demonstrations were limited, and in Sudan, where I was working as a journalist at the time, they were crushed. But this time around, protesters have learned lessons of the past and from their own experiences, and also those of neighboring countries. So here's how the protests are basically different from those in 2011. For years, the work of opposing Sudanese government had been undertaken by traditional political parties and rebel groups who formed ever-changing alliances. In 2011, though those who sought to ignite popular opposition to Bashir's rule were mostly young activists and college students. Their domains were the country's universities and upper-class neighborhoods. Though their efforts were short-lived, in a matter of weeks, they were defeated with demonstrations, with demonstrators being arrested, with torture and forced exile. So that's what happened last time. But this time, the Sudanese Professional Association, the group I was telling you about, which is an independent trade union, took the lead. It was composed of activists who belonged to various political groups, but the appearance and the appeal of an unaffiliated, non-ideological body has been instrumental in mobilizing masses of people, reigniting the historically important role of trade unions in Sudanese politics. And the association is courting others. We learned the importance of unity, said the spokesman of the Sudanese Professional Association. So here's what I think was important. So we often have a lot of revolutions wherever we are, whether you're in the diaspora or whether you're on the continent. But a lot of these revolutions are often led by groups who are basically privileged, groups who stay, let's say they're college students, but they don't really branch out and mobilize the community. And understand that the colleges are very important as far as revolution, because there's a certain type of dedication, a certain type of time that is given to causes that on college campuses that usually aren't given in the normal everyday workday with the everyday workforce. So there's definitely a great advantage to having the colleges and the universities entrenched with what's going on. However, if you don't branch out and realize that this is the common man, the common woman, we have to not just have this being an elitist movement, but actually branch out and actually have some type of meaningful movement, then we kind of stay inside of this little bubble that is very easy to be crushed. And we've seen this with a lot of times throughout our history. I'll say in the United States, great example is something like Black Lives Matter that had they definitely had the ability to mobilize the streets with their hashtag and with anti-police violence. But did they have the ability to organize the streets? No, I don't think there was any true effort to organize the streets. There's more effort to organize in these elitist circles. So that's a lesson that they learned, and it's a lesson that we must learn. And so we see this time with the Sudanese Professional Association, it's a lot more successful because they are actually not just staying inside of a certain circle, but they're actually branching out and trying to reach the masses and the common person. So what does this mean for us? This is, again, a positive move. I hope that as far as all the other countries in Africa, we've been seeing a lot of regime changes happening lately, and I'm hoping that we're paying attention to what is a successful regime change. Because if you're only changing a regime and you don't have a follow-up plan, and in this case it was civilian rule, if you don't have a follow-up plan for what type of democracy, or even if you don't want a democracy, what type of government that you want, you have to, if you don't have that follow-up plan, you have to understand that it's very easy for outsiders to come in and influence the politics and put their person in place. And this person could be way worse than the person that you thought you had before. For example, Zimbabwe is the best example of that. So let's learn this lesson. Let's watch closely, and let's feel good that we have some evolving of consciousness. And I hope that this is not just the Sudanese people and the Algerians who have taken the role of saying that we're going to actually study and actually look back at the past and correct our mistakes. I'm hoping that this is the masses, that we're not moving by our emotions, but that we're moving by thought, revolution, that we're very careful to plan out what we do. So that's really all I have on this story. I'd love to hear all of your thoughts, and I'll see you all in another video.